She was president of her local NAACP youth chapter and later became president for North Carolina College and youth chapters. She has served in numerous leadership roles, including president of the Lincoln Chapter 564 OES and Pi. What she said. Yeah. I'm not going to even say it. And chapter, I know this one, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. AKA Sorority Incorporated. And they just had their big meeting. Okay, you just had your big meeting in Houston, right? Election year. It was election year. Yes, right. I know that. Most recently, as the Mid-Atlantic Region representative in the International Protocol Committee of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority. Currently, Dr. Smith serves as a part-time faculty at Capella University's Counseling Department and as Faculty Advisor Forum faculty member. Driven to help others create better life, Dr. Smith recently authored her first book entitled Stronger: How Overcoming Life's Adversities Can Push You Into Your Purpose. Although she graduated from college with a criminal justice degree, a Master of Arts in Education Counseling, and a Master of Business Administration before obtaining her doctorate, her journey through college was not always the best years of her life. The life-changing lessons she learned from her struggles, battles, and trauma and family secrets are what pushed her into her purpose. They are also what brings her here today as she shares how you can too become stronger. Now, the bio that I read was a little different. Yes, it talked more about how you got to this journey and the pain and some of your family background. But it is amazing, her testimony that I've read, that she is here today. And we know it is only by the grace of God. I hope that you will listen, open your hearts to receive and your minds to comprehend and your ears to hear what Dr. Teresa Smith will teach us today, what God will teach us through her today. Amen. Thank you. Well, we had the other one.
I know which one you read now.
The tag is gone. Let us. Let's do this.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is good to dwell in the house of the Lord. And that was what he said to me this morning when I was sitting back on the pew. And I thought, okay, God, what would you have me to do? I want to do a little housekeeping first. To Dr. Pamela Holder, President of the Women's Auxiliary for High Point Educational and Missionary Baptist Association, for facilitating the 105th annual session of the Women's Auxiliary. Thank you so very much for the invitation. I also want to thank Sonia Hopkins for connecting me to Dr. Holder. You know, when Dr. Holder gave me her theme, her 4-year theme, Influencing Like Jesus to Make a Difference, many things went through my head. But I'm gonna be kind of scattered. It's gonna appear, but I'm not really scattered. I want to say to Mr. Denver Wright, thank you for being my videographer. I want to say to Mr. Bobby, is Mr. Bobby in here? Mr. Bobby, he was here this morning and he was trying to help us get set up. And then some people are like, well, why is she thinking all these people? Because it's important. I want to thank Dean Thomas. You know, he was helping us get everything set up. Dr. Leach, I didn't even know who Dr. Leach was. And she said, I think it looks okay now. Because we've been all over the place trying to give you a visual. And, you know, when I look at influence and I think about the goodness of God, you have to thank people. We talk about giving people their flowers while they are young. that's a flower that I'm giving. And we never know what a person needs. I know protocol would say, why did she step up here when Dr. Holder was reading my bio? Because I was led to. And I try to do what thus saith the Lord. But now let me back up and do my home training. Giving honor to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, who is the author and finisher of my life. To the pastors, pulpit associates that were here, to the moderators, to the presidents of the women's auxiliaries in your various churches, saints, members, and friends, good morning. We're going to talk about influence and power makes the difference. When you think of the word influencer, what name or words come to mind? Now, let me tell you this. I like a little interaction. I've been toying with this. Am I going to do Sunday school? Am I going to do Baptist Training Union? Am I going to preach? How am I going to do this? We're going to do a little of all of it, okay? So that means I like participation. So when you think of the word influencer, is there any particular name or any face that comes to mind? Who? Parents. Okay, who else? Say it loud, Dr. Holder. Obama, yes. Did someone say teachers? Absolutely. Now, for some people, these faces may have come to mind. Beyonce, Princess Diana, Mother Teresa. The lady, the blonde, is Stephen Jobs' wife, Serena Williams. Mrs. Markle, I'm forgetting the first name, but our new princess. Megan, thank you. Michelle Obama, Oprah Winfrey, and of course Maya Angelou, because we're right outside of Winston-Salem. How about these biblical women? Sarah, Mary, Bathsheba, the Samaritan woman, Abigail, Eve, Martha, and Mary of Bethany. What do these contemporary women and then the biblical women have in common? What do you think? Did somebody say that? Did I hear love Jesus? Okay, love Jesus. We hope. We hope. We praying for them. They were women of action. Yes, ma'am. What'd you say now? Well known, absolutely. Yes, ma'am. And they all had faults, absolutely. Women who influenced someone else, and they had faults. Because if you go back to the woman at the well, she was very influential. She had faults, but then she influenced other individuals. So they were helpful. Actions spoke louder than their words. They were committed, inspiring. They were resilient, dedicated. They were unique, because he can use anybody. Selfless, strong, patient. They were devoted, compassionate. They were submissive. They were resourceful, and they were humble. Okay. Then, as I kept toying with over the last week, what am I going to do? Esther. I settled on Esther. And what I want to do now is sort of walk us through the story of Esther. Now, the book of Esther is set during the times that the Persians ruled Judea in the reign of King Xerxes. The Jews became subjects of the Persian Empire when Cyrus the Great, king of Media and Persia, conquered Babylon. Now, prior to this time, Babylon had taken Judea, and many Jews had been captive. Cyrus the Great issued a decree that the Jewish captives could choose to stay in Babylon, as they had prospered there, or they could go back. Now, some of these Jews had traveled further east to Susa, and Susa was the capital of Persia, the new seat of power. Although far from their land, though, these Jews still remained true to their Jewish faith, and that's very important. Now, as the book opens, we find that King Xerxes is in the 3rd year of his reign, and he's hosting a party. Now, for 6 months, he had been showing off all of his wealth, But now he's in the middle of a 7-day, a week-long party. And so he's got everybody involved in it, everybody that's regular coming folks. We're even celebrating, but of course with him, he has all of his military brass, princes, prince, and governors. And so, he's drinking, they're celebrating. And so he's feeling good. And you know how it is when we start celebrating and feeling good. He wanted to show his power because, like I said, for 6 months, he's been letting them know he's the man. So he sends for Queen Vashti, who's hosting a party also because, of course, these men had their wives with them. And so on that 7th day, he sends for her. And when he summoned her, you know how we can be sometimes. She was hosting, she was the hostess with the mostest. She was, doing all the hors d'oeuvres and trying to make sure her guests were taken care of. And so she was busy. So she let him know she couldn't come then. Now, this is the king. And he got all these people around him. He got all this money. He done decreed that you can just drink as much wine as you want to drink. Everybody's drinking. They feeling good. And then she going to tell him, I'm not coming. Now that's an issue. So, he's angry now because he has sent for the queen because she's a beauty. And he wants to show her off like he's showing off everything else that he has, but she doesn't come. So now he's got to save face. So he consults the counselors that are with him, because, what am I going to do? And they tell him, you know how men can be. And I know I got, about 4 right there, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, I got 10 men in the room. Okay, I know these men, they can hold their own. But you know how it is. He consulted these 10 men in the room. And they said, now, look here. Now, it would have been different if y'all had this little conversation and y'all was in your private quarters. But, she done refused to come to you, and you got all these hundreds of people who are witnessing this. Now, we just, this man said, Now, you see, we just can't have this woman to defy you publicly. Now, they tried to make it seem like they had his back. But then they said, because you see, if Queen Vashti can defy you, the king, then that tells these other women that they don't have to do what we ask them to do. And we just can't have that. Now, if you want to do it, that's on you. But we can't have that. And he's thinking, okay, now, because they made decisions when they were drinking. We don't make decisions when we're drinking. We hope our politicians don't. But that's the way they did back then, Ooh, I thought about that. We don't know what our politicians do. We wonder about those decisions, but I digress. And so, he's got all this pressure. He's already angry. And then they're giving him a way out. We can't have this. We can't have this. So he says, okay, I'm going to issue a royal decree. She thinks she's all that in a bag of chips. I'm going to prove to her what bag of chips she is. She's an off-brand, and I like brand. So his decree said that he was going to banish her. And she's never to appear in his presence again. And, of course, this is Persia, but, I like Egypt. So let it be said, so let it be done. And that was it. Okay? So she was never to be seen again. Well, the party ends because it's 7 days, and that was on the 7th day. So the party ends. He's getting sober now. And so, he's kind of feeling some kind of way. You know how it is. We tell the person, I don't want to see you no more. And then, after you get through being angry, you want to see him again. So anyway, he's having second thoughts. And so his servants, they realize he's having second thoughts. And so they're like, let's just go and look at all the virgins. We'll start recruiting virgins, and we'll get them prepared for you, and we'll have the next Queen of Persia contest, okay? So his attendants went out. They started recruiting people. You would have thought it was American Idol. And so they started bringing all these virgins, and, they're like, okay, we're going to get them prepared for him, okay? Well, at the same time, there was Esther over in the distance. Now, she was a Jew, and she had been raised by her cousin Mordecai because her parents were deceased. Well, she was pretty. They tell me she had a nice figure. You can tell right there she's pretty. She had a nice figure, and so she was selected also. But it was something about Esther, something about being a work in progress, okay? And so, God was preparing her. And, this book is a little different because God's name's not mentioned in Esther, but he was in the mix. And so Esther is selected. She's recruited, she's selected, but she found favor with Haggai. Now, ain't it good to find favor with somebody? And so after finding favor, that meant that she got the best of everything. She got the best room, she got the best servants, the best hairstylist. When they were doing the oil treatments for 6 months, she always got her oil treatment first. And then they were perfuming them down and everything. She got the best perfume. And so, since she found favor with the head pageant official, she had it going on. But everybody kind of liked Esther for some reason. It was just something about her. Now, we knew it was the God in her. But anyway, so, we go on. It's about a year has passed now, so the women are being sent in to the king. And so the thing is that they just parade you around. It's sort of like a beauty contest, even though we're changing our beauty contests now in the U.S. But they're parading the virgins around. And so you get to take anything that you want with you. So they were taking all these different things to attract the king. Now, you were in good stead if he called you back. But if he didn't call you back, you know what that meant. So anyway, it was Esther's time. Well, she listened to Haggai because, remember, she found favor. And she basically went as she was. And so when the king saw her, he was so impressed with her, he fell in love with her. And he made her the new queen. Now, while Esther's participating in this big pageant, with all this pomp and circumstance, her cousin Mordecai was conducting business at the king's gate. Now, the king's gate, let's think of it as really the center of town. And so that's where you would find the businesses, the legal offices, and given the fact that he was conducting business, he had to have been a little prosperous. He had been one of those Jews who had kind of made his way there. So he had a little authority. But while he's sitting there conducting business and trying to think, what do the young folks call it, ear-hogging, he was ear-hogging, and we say eavesdropping. And so what happened was he heard in the distance these two men talking. Now, they are the guards. And they were talking about the king's guard. Now, get that now. They're the king's guards. And he's hearing them talk about how they're really not feeling him anymore. And they plan to assassinate him. Okay? Now, Mordecai sends word to Esther and says, these two men plan to kill the king. You need to handle this. So she lets the king know that his two trusted guards are planning to kill him. And she lets him know that Mordecai has told her this, has sent the word. And so they investigate. Well, sure enough, they find out those two men were planning to kill the king. Well, you know what happened to them. They were hung, and that was the end of them. And of course, the king, like most of us nowadays, he had that written down in his logbook or his journal because, we can't remember everything. So he had it written down. And again, think about it. He's the king. He likes to know that he's had big conquests. So he had it written down. Well, we go on, and later the king decides that he's going to promote one of his officials. And he promotes Haman, the Agagite, to prime minister. Now, prime minister would give him the highest rank in the Persian Empire. That's a big deal. And so Haman was a little sly. And so that meant that everybody would have to bow down to him. And, they're paying homage to him. He's the big man on campus. Well, everybody did that except for Mordecai. Now, Mordecai, he was hip to Haman. Some say that Haman was a descendant of an ancient, the Amalite king and Agag. And so, there was hard, they didn't really like each other. So he was not going to be bowing down to this group. And so, there's always somebody that, what they say, if a dog will bring a bone, they carry a bone. There's always somebody bringing and carrying something. So Haman hears that there's this man named Mordecai at the king's gate who said he is not going to bow down to him and he is not going to give him his just due. Well, he felt some kind of way about this. And then he thought for himself, no, this man is not going to give me my due. So you know what Haman does. You know, he goes back, because he's the prime minister now, and he has a conversation with the king, because he has the king's ear. And he tells him, you know, we've got these immigrants here in the country, and y'all listen to me now. I'm going to try to phrase it nicely, because this is being videotaped. We got these immigrants here in the country, and they got different customs. They not law-abiding. They don't respect our law. They not you writing laws, and everybody else is following the law. They don't follow the law. They might be raping our women. You know, they might be stealing our stuff, and just so on. You know, because they immigrants. And so anyway, after he got into the king's ear, he's like, you know, I'm a rich man. And I know you need to take care of this, and I've got 10,000 talents of silver that I can deposit into the royal bank, and we don't even have to use your money to get these mercenaries who can then take care of these immigrants, and we can just move them right out of our country, and then we'll have a good country, and we'll be good. We're gonna be good again, because I want to make sure that Persia is good again, because right now we ain't as good as we used to be, and and when 10,000 silver talents, you guys are like, well, is that much money? That's like $212 million a day. So that's a lot of money. The king, he had already been embarrassed by Vashti, and he had to, get that edict that we just can't have women acting like they in charge. And now we got this group of people who trying to disrespect me too. So, he said, yeah, go ahead on. So he gave his signet ring, and that has the crest of the crown, to Haman, and said, just go to the secretaries and do what you want to do, and then just send the word out through all of the kingdom. And, sure enough, Haman was just so happy. So he went and he did that, and he sent the word out that we are now going to kill. We're not just going to kill them. We're going to massacre this group of people. We are going to eliminate them. There will not be one Jew that is living in the Persian Empire. And so it didn't matter if they were young, old, men, women, boy, girl, baby. Now, we think back, because we've gone through this, and we're going to go through it again in the New Testament. We're going to wipe them out, and we're going to do it on the 13th day of the 12th month, Adar, and then you can take their stuff. Okay. Some people done got excited. All we need is somebody to give us a little permission, and we can just be our true self. So some people are quite excited about this, because we're going to wipe out these Jews now. Oh, yeah, I didn't like them no way. I don't know why people are even doing business with Mordecai anyway. He cheating, and how he getting money and stuff. They were slaves, and now they think they better than us and this and that. You know how to go. So anyway, it's done gone out. And so, a lot of people, they just happy. They're just happy. So they just waiting. Well, Mordecai hears and sees the edict, because it's posted everywhere, so everybody know. In a couple months, and I think it's about 9 months, we're going to be able to kill these people, and you got permission to do it. Okay, so Mordecai learns of this. Well, of course, he rips his clothes off, throws on a sackcloth, rubs his body in ash, and he's grieving now. So he's wailing around, he's crying. Other Jews within the empire doing likewise. Well, eventually, Esther, she's up in the big house now. She hears what's going on. She's still in contact with her cousin. And so she's like, why is he dressed like that? Why is he acting crazy in the street? So, she sends clothes to him, and he refuses them. Then she sends her servant back and says, find out what is going on. Well, they go back and forth for a while. And the servant finally tells her that, look, this is what he gave me. It's a decree from the king that's going to kill all the Jews. And he said, you're a Jew too. And just because you're in the big house now, you're not going to be escaping from this. Jews are Jews. They're going to wipe out everybody. And you need to do something about it. Do something about it. I think she said, okay. It's been about 30 days since the king has even wanted to see me. But we're not talking about that part of the history. So now what am I supposed to do? You can't go into the king unless you call for it. Because if you go in and he didn't ask you to come in, that's automatic death. Okay? That's the culture that we're living in. So what am I to do? So she says, okay, I'm going to pray and I'm going to fast for 3 days. But I need my people to help me. So she goes, she has the word sent to Mordecai. Now, when I was going through this scripture, I kept saying, Lord, do you want me to talk about 7s and 3s? And he said, no. But this scripture, this book is all about 7s and 3s. Go back and read it. Okay, 7s and 3s are all throughout this book. And so that tells us something, because he was always in the midst of it, even if his name was not being used. So, she prays and she fasts and everything, and, she's so weak. You know how it is when we be praying and fasting after 3 days, and she worried and everything. So she gets some maidservants, and she got one on each side of her, and they helping her get to the king. And, she didn't get too close now, because you see, if she go in without his permission, that's death. But he happens to see her out there. He's like, oh, there's Esther. Come on in, Esther. What's going on with you? So, she goes in, and then as she approaches, she touched the tip of the scepter. Okay, what do you want, my queen? Ask it, and it is yours. Well, after being invited in to the king, Esther decided, let me be smart about this. Let me be smart. She says, it's been a long time since we had any time together. I'd love it if you come to dinner. And why don't you invite Haman, our new prime minister? Well, the king was just on it. He says, that's all you want? She said, yes. I thought I'd prepare dinner for the two of you tonight. He said, we'd love to come. And so, of course, the king and Haman just went right on. And Haman just so happy because, he really think he's the big man now. He done been made prime minister. Now he's going to be dining with the queen. He's in high cotton, as they say. So the king and Haman, they go on over there to Esther. King's having his cocktail because he likes his wine. He's like, now, Esther, what do you want? And she's like, I would just like to have dinner with you and Haman, He's like, what do you want? She's like, well, I don't really want much of nothing. I got everything I need. What do you want? She said, well, why don't y'all just come on back tomorrow night and we'll have dinner again. And I'll think while you guys are gone for this night, what is it that I want? I really just wanted to spend time with you. So they have dinner, and everybody just so happy. And eventually she says, well, go home, and have the rest of the night, da-da-da. Haman leaves. He is on cloud nine. He is on cloud 9 because not only has he been made prime minister, he's now found favor with the queen because he has been invited into her portion of the palace. So he's just so happy. How you got a good jigging and everything in your step, he's spry. And then he just walking down the street, everybody looking at him, they just bowing and all this different stuff. And then he gets to the king's gate. And who should he spot? Lord, it's Mordecai. And Mordecai looks at him because, he's grieving because he's in the sackcloth. He looks at him. He doesn't appear to be afraid of Haman or anything. That kind of angered him. And it just kind of, put a damper on all that good feeling. So he kind of got mad. And so he went on home, and then he was sharing with his wife and his friends and his son all the good things that had happened that day. And he had dinner with the queen, which was a first, because you just don't get invited to dinner with the queen. It's like the Queen of England, or even having dinner with Michelle Obama, so that's a big deal. And so he's just so happy. But then he said he ran across that Mordecai. And he disrespected him. And they just all got up and on. Disrespecting you? Nobody should be disrespecting you, the prime minister. And so you know how people get in your ear? But it was easy to get in his ear because he already had a little something against the Jews, but they got in his ear. And so they said, why don't you build a gallows 75 feet high? And why don't you just hang that Mordecai? Just hang him anyway, because go ahead and just kill him because you're already going to kill him anyway on the 12th month. And so, that does make sense. I can go home and get rid of that one. And then, people, let's go home and kill him. Well, just go and ask the king tomorrow because you in good graces. You done had dinner with the queen. Your king done made you prime minister. You're in good stead. And so, he's like, okay, I'm going to do that. So fast forward back over at the palace. The king has had a good meal. You know how sometimes you have a good meal, he had a little bit to drink, and he couldn't go to sleep. He had insomnia. So he wanted to read a book or have somebody to read to him. So he said, bring me the log book, the book that has all the things that I've done. He wanted to hear about all the things and who he was, make him feel good. So they brought the book and they were reading about his conquest. And then they got to the portion where it talked about the fact that Mordecai had prevented his assassination. So he's like, what did we do for him? You know, the servants were afraid to answer. Nothing. So we didn't do anything for Mordecai? No, you didn't do anything, King. Something should be done for Mordecai. Well, you know, by now it's like 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, and, you know, we've got Haman who hasn't really slept. So here he is walking into the court. The king hears somebody and says to his servants, who is that? Oh, it's Haman. Oh, invite him in. And so Haman, you know, before he could speak to ask his question, the king says to him, you know, I've got a person I found favor with me. What would you do to honor them? Well, you know, Haman, he, you know, straightened up and made sure his robe and everything was good and his beard everything was in place, because he knew the king was talking about him. So he said, well, you know, Your Majesty, it would make a person feel good if you would give them a used robe, you know, something that you've worn before. If you let them ride around on one of your horses with the crown, because remember, that's the crest on him. The robe and horse could be entrusted to one of your high officials to take it to that person and to adorn the person with it. And then that person would lead that person who's found favor with you all around the city, proclaiming that the king has found favor with this person, which means everybody else has to honor this person. Well, you know, King thought that's a good idea. And Haman was like, yeah. And he's like, Haman, I want you to do this for me. Haman, he knows it's all about him. He said, no, I want you to go and do everything that you said, but I want you to do it for Mordecai. Mordecai, but you know, he said that on the inside. You know, it's like when your parents used to say something to you, you know not to speak. You want me to do all this for Mordecai? Yes, sir. Okay. And so he did. Now, can you imagine? You there to ask the king, can you kill the man? The king don't tell you to do all this good stuff for him. So he did exactly what the king told him to do. After he had done that, he covered his head. Because can you imagine the shame that he now felt? Because now we've got Mordecai having more influence than the prime minister. You understand what I'm saying? Because he's got more influence now. So it's like, okay. And that influence brings a little power. So here it is. He goes home, Haman does, and he tells his family, you know, everything that's happened, his friends, and they tell him, look, you done for. It's a wrap. Because you wanted to have the Jews killed, particularly Mordecai, and now you've had to parade him around town. Okay, you're done for. And so he's shaking. He's trying to figure out, how am I going to get out of this? But about that time, the eunuchs arrive, and they go to get him for dinner. So he goes on back over to Queen Esther's portion of the palace for dinner, trying to figure out, now, how am I going to get out of this? Well, you know, they're feasting and drinking and having a good old time. And, you know, he's still a little worried, but not understanding that his time was at hand. And so, again, the king says to Esther, what is it that you want? And she's like, well, king, you know, whatever you desire, Esther, you can have them. So she looks at him and she says, if I have found favor in your eyes at all, I ask that you grant my life and the life of my people. You know, she told him there'd been an edict that her people were supposed to be annihilated. It would be one thing if we were just going to be enslaved. I wouldn't bother you with this. It wouldn't be that important. But they're going to wipe us completely out. He's trying to figure out, what is she talking about? And so he's like, who's going to wipe you out? I don't understand. And she replied, that evil man, Haman, you know, the prime minister. He's going to wipe us out. Wipe out who? The Jews. The Jews? Yes, I'm a Jew. You're a Jew? Yes, sir, I'm a Jew. And we're going to be wiped out in like 6 months from now. We're going to be wiped out. He's so flabbergasted, the king is. He just steps out of the room because he's trying to process, what do you mean my wife is going to be killed? What are you saying that I have given an order that's going to kill my wife? Because he didn't understand, because it was those people, those immigrants. So he didn't even know what people, Plus, he didn't know that she was a Jew. So now, of course, Haman knows what's getting ready to happen. So he's just jumped up. He's pleading with Esther, please help me, please help me, please help me. He's on bending knees. And he kind of, you know how you just on bending knees, kind of fall over on somebody. Well, the king walks back in. Well, to him, it's like, what are you doing? Are you trying to rape my wife? I mean, what are you doing in my house? You're going to now disrespect me in addition to disrespecting the queen. Well, you know, that was it. And Haman knew that. And so, of course, he was hung from the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Now, you know, sometimes we think money is everything, but it's not. And so, of course, the king gives Esther all of Haman's possessions, his estate, which is good. And she says, okay, Mordecai, you can manage that. But there's still the issue of my life. Do you understand? We killed the person who wanted me and my race dead, but what about our life? And so she has a conversation with the king, and he finally understands. And the law was that he could not repeal that law. He had to do another decree that would supersede the one that had already been written. So he said, here, he gave Mordecai his signet ring. He said, you and Esther and the secretaries, you write out what needs to be written, and then you send it out. And that's exactly what they did. Now, as tables turn, basically on that 12th day, or the 13th day of the 12th month of Adar, the Jews had permission to kill anybody that came against them. And the scripture says that they killed a whole lot of people, because remember, when you get somebody, when you have someone who doesn't particularly care for you, and that person allows other people to express their true nature, then, you know, people get up in arms. And so, therefore, it was a whole lot of people waiting to finally get the Jews. But we know that God was in the midst, so the Jews were victorious. Now, but keep in mind, they didn't take those people's things because they knew best. It wasn't about taking other people's possession. It was about protecting what God said we need to protect. So now, as we get back to here, we're looking at influence and we're looking at power. Credibility is the key to successful influence. You've got to be competent. You got to have good character. I can't quote the old adage, but character will take you places that money cannot keep you. You got to have some charisma. We talk about Obama and Michelle Obama. There's charisma there. Power, though, the ability to influence others' attitudes and behavior, the capacity to translate intention into reality and sustain it. And we see that Esther was able to do all of those things because she had influence. She was competent, she was trustworthy, and she was charismatic because she was able to win favor with everybody in the kingdom. Now, what was Esther's purpose? What I'm hearing, say it again. Save the Jews. But by saving the Jews, she protected the line that the Messiah had to come through. So she had a whole lot on her. We're looking at organization now. What was Esther's role in the Persian organization? I got it up here. Let's think about it. Did she have a position of prominence? Was she highly visible? I've already talked about everybody loved her. Everybody loved her. Did she have the king's love and trust? Yeah, because if she didn't, when she ventured in after 3 days of fasting, I told you, it's a lot of 3 and 7 in here. After 3 days of fasting, if she hadn't, he could have put her to death, but he didn't. What about wisdom? Did her character change? No, it never changed. She always kept counsel with Mordecai. Now, why do you think that was significant? Say it again now. He was her covering. And he kept her connected because he may not have even known how important she was to what was to come, but he kept her covered. And she didn't mind being covered by him. Because think about it. The people that were her servants, they knew that she was interfacing with this Jew. Now, the king may not have known, but they did. She responded to his concern and his suggestions. And she involved Mordecai in her plan to save the Jews. Now, why do you think it was important for him to be involved in that? Think about the covering. Say it again, ma'am. That was her cousin, you said? Covering cousin. And what else? What about the interconnectedness of them? Because with Mordecai, remember, he had a place of prominence within the Jews, even throughout the Persian Empire. So by her working with Mordecai, then he could send messages out. This is what we're going to do. Everybody was fasting during the time period that she was fasting before she went in. And we know when one or two are joined together. But think about all those hundreds or thousands of people joined together praying and fasting at the same time. That's it, the power. They were connecting to him. And she used her intuition, her mother wit to save her people. Now, she was an executor. Now, she understood the art of appealing to the feelings of loyalty, friendship, and love when she approached the king. But she prayed about that. Because she knew he loved her. You know, he saw her one time and she was made queen. So she could have gone in boastful. But, you know, he don't take well to that because, you know, it happened to Vashti. But she went in submissively, humble, okay? And so she won personal favor with him. Her request was important and he granted it. She knew she could count on him, but she had to determine how do you go in and have a conversation with him. See, that's what she had to figure out. And she knew to ask for a favor before actually saying what she wanted. I thought that was real interesting when I was drawing this out last night because she knew what she wanted when she went the first time. But she kept him dangling. I'm not saying keep people dangling, but you have to, you know, timing. Timing is what we're talking about. She was looking at that time because if she had told him immediately, he may not have responded the way we needed him to respond. But she understood the ability to use timing and patience, and wait on the Lord. And so that's what she did. And so after doing that, she won his favor again and again because she invited him to dinner. He got him fed. He's had cocktails, invite him back. Oh, he's just wanting to do anything to please her now. And he did. Yeah, he did. Risk taker. She was a risk taker, you know. But she still applied pressure, but she understood that God often requires a personal sacrifice. Now, we all know the verse, if I perish and all that stuff, but I want us to look beyond that because everything that she was doing was a risk. The fact that she was sending her servants to have conversation with her cousin Mordecai before this event happened, that was a risk. But she found favor with them, and they were protecting her, even though they didn't understand why they were protecting her. But again, making persistent requests to the king. She was persistent, but she was intentional with her persistence. Remind the king that he agreed to grant her wish. Checking frequently on her wish, checking frequently to see if her wish was going to be granted. So, you know, he's given her, you know, Mordecai, Haman's house. That was nice. But I need to save my people. Okay, we're going to get the information out. How long is that going to take? It took about 3 weeks to get the mail out to everybody. Well, when are we going to be okay? It's going to be the same date. The same date that you guys were going to be annihilated, that's the day that everybody has permission to kill anybody that comes against them. Well, okay, well, what if well, you can go back the next day too. So, you know, he said, y'all can kill some people the next day too. And they did. Then, of course, she's like, well, you know, but she didn't say it like I'm going to say it. Well, it's just so much been happening. People don't really understand the power of the king. And you need respect, and you're such a respectful man, have saved these innocent people. You know, I know that Haman's sons have been killed, but maybe they should be hung or from the gallows or poles, you know, stabbed on the poles and all that. Well, yeah, that does make a statement that I'm just not going to tolerate this. Again, frequently checking on her wish, making sure everything was being done and that the specific date that her people would be saved. What power did God give you? We each have power. We each have a purpose. We each have organizations. Organizations can be our jobs. It can be our families. If you think about it, navigating family politics can be quite trying sometimes. Wisdom that he's given you. Are you an executor? Are you a risk taker? Again, we all have the power. We have to tap into that power that God has given us now. I'm talking about the God-given power. Today, we have to say that we're going to make a difference. And that difference starts with each of us. Esther is a wonderful illustration of how one person who had wise counsel was able to save her entire race and thus preserve the lineage of Christ so that we all can be saved. Okay? So let's agree we're going to make a difference today. So we're influence and power. When you blend them together, it does make the difference. Thank you.